All right, have another ABA Tech Show reaction video. So happy today to be joined by a guest. This is one of the speakers that I really enjoyed, someone who didn't hold back, shared everything. His name is Terrell Turner. He's a 3-time nationally ranked CPA, a top 20 global finance influencer. He runs TL Turner Group, which provides CFO services specifically for law firms, and he produces the ABA's Law Practice Today podcast. He sees the inside of law firm finances every single day. So when we talk about video for lawyers, voice AI, legal AI, and where the industry is headed, he's not guessing, he's looking at the numbers. So let's bring him in. Hey, thanks for joining today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So you recovered from the show in Chicago?
Yeah, I think it's been maybe about 2 weeks. I will say the weather was colder than I expected, but the conference was it was jam-packed with a lot of good things to where when I got home, I'm like, yeah, I needed a nap.
Yeah, I was definitely exhausted. Now, where I saw you at the tech show was your talk about a video for lawyers and how important it is for lawyers. I really appreciate how you actually did a demo and you didn't hold back anything. You weren't trying to make it seem like we had to hire some video company or buy fancy equipment. You're just encouraging lawyers to get started.
That's something I really look for because I remember what it was like when I started, my accounting firm and like you hear all of these things about, oh, you should do this, you should do this. And it's like, well, buy my program or sign up for this and we'll kind of walk you through how to actually do it. And for me, it's like I was like, you know what? I I just want enough to just get started. Like, cause if I could get enough to get started and get the wheels turning, then if I need to fine tune some stuff, I'm willing to hire somebody, but help me get started. And so I made a decision that like whenever I get up to speak, I'm going to be open, transparent, and let people know like, hey, here's how you get started. It's something that I do think that a lot of speakers don't always lean into doing. And I get it. Some people, speaking is part of their business development model of give them enough to want more, to reach out to hire us, and that's just not my approach, especially when it comes down to talking about video or like lawyers using video. I run an accounting firm. I don't have a video program to sell you, so you're going to get what I had. You're going to get all the good stuff in the session.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. So here's how I see it. And I want to get your take on what we're doing right now. I see video as a dual use of time. So I'm connecting with you as a professional. And since we hit record on this, we're also walking away with content that we can both use. I see using video as networking. It's like a dual use of time. So what we're doing today in this interview, we're getting to know each other, learning about each other's businesses, and then we're also going to walk away with content, with video that we can each use to clip up and promote our businesses. That's how I see video as a networking tool. So how do you think about people approach video this way as a networking tool?
Unfortunately, I haven't seen, I would say the vast majority of people approach video that way. I think that they should, because it was one of the things that really helped me, especially in the early days of, starting my business and really, I think just learning the industry more. I started off doing a podcast of interviewing people that I thought might be my ideal client. And it just gave me a chance to one, network with them and just learn what are the things that they value, what are the things that are important to them. So then I knew how to, improve my website. I knew how to, improve how we were showing up as a business to attract more of the right people. But one of the things that I've seen a lot of people do when it comes down to video, and I do understand it because it may be part of the journey is, they start off by just, I'm going to do video and I'm just going to tell everybody about what I do, what we offer. It's more of like they use video to do the commercial instead of really getting to that point where they use video to build the relationships. And I think people who take the perspective you have is you're using video to build the relationship and to get the content, I think that that's like a win-win strategy.
One of the first ways I started using video, I saw it as an educational tool. So like when people had questions, I wanted to create videos to answer common questions. And then that turned into, oh, this is good for your website. And then, oh, that's actually good for SEO and those things. And then from there, it's kind of expanded. The networking thing, I've had people, I get, as an attorney and a business owner, you get people reaching out to you all the time, that want to go for coffee or for lunch or have a quick call. But people, I had a realtor in Tucson, and he noticed that I've had a few real estate professionals do this. They noticed that I had YouTube, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to do a YouTube interview?" And that's always a yes for me. Versus, do you want to go get coffee? Versus, yeah, I'll plug in for a 30-minute interview, and it's going to be valuable for me because I'll get the recording of it, and it'll be posted out there on the internet.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, in the world of business, we start learning that you got to really use your time and all your resources wisely. And I think if you can, combine those two, where we can create an opportunity where we can get to know each other and network while also building up content that then can be reused and repurposed. And so I would just, reach out to, people who didn't know me and just say, hey, I'm running a podcast, would love to hop on a call, interview you about your story as a law firm owner for about 15 minutes. And I would say 8 times out of 10, people said yes. And the ones that said no, it was either timing didn't work out, or there was something going on where they had a trial coming up, they needed to be in court. And so I will say it became a huge, huge win-win scenario because I learned, we got to network, and for them, they got to share their story. And we put a lot of energy into putting the content out there so more people could hear their story as well.
Yeah, well, so 8 out of 10, that's great. So did you ever reach out without asking to do video? Do you have something else to compare to? That kind of leads us to our next point, which is going to be data we're going to talk about. But I bet it'd be a lot lower if you weren't leading with the podcast or video.
Fortunate for me, I learned it probably prior to launching, or let me say prior to really expanding. Just because I started my firm, my first day in business was April 1st of 2020. So it was just as everything was shutting down for the pandemic. And so back then I knew that, a lot of businesses were trying to cut costs. So for me, early on, it was, you know what, I'm not even trying to make a sales pitch. We can't go get coffee because everything's shutting down. Like the only thing we could do virtually. And so I just said, hey, what if, for the next few months, I just focus on doing, the content angle of just inviting them on. And that's kind of been my journey. Now, what I can compare it to is I've talked to many other, business owners who said that, they have the similar target audience. Like they want to work with lawyers. And, they share with me a lot of times when they're sending out emails about, hey, we have this new product that can really help you, or we have this new technology that we're really helping people implement.
Yeah, that's good to hear that many attorneys were open to it.
Yeah.
That's good for me to hear that. So next thing I want to talk about, this is where I think our worlds overlap. You're a CPA who's inside law firm financials every day. In your experience, how do most attorneys do when it comes to actually tracking their numbers?
Yeah, I would say for most attorneys, it's not their forte. I mean, it's the thing that I probably hear the most is, what, numbers aren't my thing. Give me a contract, give
That's
me,
so weird
words on
to
a
me.
page.
Yeah, but it is true. It's like a lawyer stereotype. It's like, oh, I'm a lawyer, I don't do math.
A lot of times when I'm, talking to an attorney where they may call and say like, hey, we're having this problem, or, we just, we aren't getting, we're getting customer complaints. Let me say that they're getting bad reviews. And then we'll say, okay, all right, well, let's look at the numbers. Like what's going on? Like how many cases do you have? And then they will look at how many cases they have. Okay, all right. How long does it take for a case to go from start to finish? And depending on what type of practice area they have, that's going to vary. But when I start asking questions like that, a lot of times I can see that the attorney has never thought about that. Like, okay, all right, well, if you have, let's say if you have 50K active cases, okay, all right, how many actually got worked on this week by you and your staff? And a lot of times they're just like, I don't know. Well, the team hit their billable hours, but okay, let's look at the data. And when we look at the data, we say, okay, out of 50 cases, your team only touched 15 of them, which means there are a lot of cases that got no attention. Like, this kind of would explain, some customers probably or clients of yours feel ignored. That may be part of the reason why you're getting some of the reviews. And, that just became more clear when you look at things like, the data of how many active cases do you have? How many of those cases did you actually work on or touch this week? Or how many of those clients did you reach out to give an update this month? And if there are some clients you've ignored, then chances are you may get some bad reviews, or you may have some people that are a little slower at paying the next invoice you send to them.
Yeah, I like that. So the metric of your clients, how many of them did you actually work on? So
Yeah,
that,
I mean, and I think it ties into, some of the ethics standards when you think about it. It's just that, if this problem continues to grow, like, you could end up with a bar complaint. I mean, which is a more serious issue because, if you're the attorney of record and you are actually taking this person's situation on as a case, like, this person came to you because they need help with a legal matter. If you're not really organized or diligent enough to really provide them with, effective legal counsel, then this could be more than just a bad review. This could actually be a bar complaint. It could be an ethics violation if it gets really bad. So I think
yeah,
the
it's
data helps you see things like that.
yeah, isn't it true that communication or lack of communication is the most common bar complaint against attorneys?
Yeah,
I think it is. It's
I
up.
can definitely see that.
It's so important. I want to come back to that later, the communication. But before that, I want to get into so data is so important. I feel like it's been really for me as a young attorney, I realized that running my business, I realized that before I ran my own business, because they're trying to make decisions, and I was like, well, you kind of need some more data. They're kind of like winging it. So I
Mhm.
realized that I had to structure my business in a way where I could collect all the data. And one of the ways, part of the ways that we do that is, or you also need to regularly meet and talk about it. So we have a regular meeting flow. So in addition to getting the data, we also do a regular meeting flow. So I have a financial meeting with my bookkeeper where I review the data and numbers. I really nerd out. I get really deep into it. And then in our team meetings, we look at kind of the most basic numbers. I don't want to overwhelm them. One of the main things I'm looking at is collections, right? If we're a business, if this is a game, which it is, right? How we keep score is collections is the number one metric for us. We also look at other things like number of leads in our areas, and other things like that to see if anything jumps out, right? That's where you can see if anything changes. At first, it's a matter of just getting kind of a baseline of where things are at, and then you can kind of see like if it's going up or down. So today we're meeting with our team. I could see that we have a backup of leads that weren't responding to fast enough, which is a great problem as a business owner. It's a problem, but it's a good one, I feel like. And some of these leads actually talk to our inbound voice AI. So I never would have known of this backup if we didn't have the meeting flow. What kind of meeting structure do you see that law firms have?
Well, I would say it is a direct correlation. I feel that firms that feel like things are running more smoothly, they tend to have a more consistent meeting flow to where, hey, beginning of the week, they have their case review meetings where they start looking at things like, okay, all right, you know, what does the caseload look like by attorney or by paralegal or by legal assistant? And they start to look at things like, okay, all right, which ones have, are up to date on the invoices that they paid, and they start looking at things like, okay, all right, you know, how much
So for
work is left on these cases?
so for me as a young attorney designing my business, I looked at dentists. It seemed like dental practice were like really organized and they made a lot of money. I'm like, what are they doing?
Mhm. You know, and I think it's very helpful to have those regular meetings because I know prior to starting my own firm, like I worked for a couple Fortune 500 companies, and I remember when I worked at General Electric. I mean, it's massive organization, and I worked in the aviation division, and a lot of times, like before the day really got going, is we would have what we call our 15-minute stand up. I don't necessarily think law firms need to do that on a daily basis, but I would say at least once a week is really looking, saying, okay, what is it that we want to accomplish this week? Like, what do we have? Like, how many leads do we have? So, hey, do we have enough people to do the consults? Or, hey, what's the plan to call these people back? And, hey, do we have a trial coming up this week? Like, hey, do we have the right support from the legal assistants or paralegals to get that work done? And I think as you kind of talk through the overview on like, okay, what do we need to get accomplished this week? And depending on what shows up on that list, you can then say, okay, all right, these additional meetings need to happen because I would say those tend to usually show a lot more productivity, and the owners of those firms tend to be a little bit happier with the results that their firm is producing because they feel like, hey, we're operating intentionally, and I kind of have a handle on all the key parts of the firm.
Yeah, happier, I would agree for sure. I would say a big part of those meetings is listening, is being available. So as the attorney and business owner, being available, having time set aside where if there's issues and questions that they have, they know that you have time to go over them, a set time. So I also meet, weekly, looking ahead. We do that meeting, we look ahead, everything, make sure we're prepared for everything and all of that. But yeah, it's the time to, what questions do you have?
Mhm.
What are the problems? I feel like that makes their job. I think that's one of the biggest complaints employees have is the lack of feedback. They don't know if they're doing good or bad, and so by providing time for them to give direct feedback, it makes their life much easier and they perform much better, which isn't that what you want as a business owner? So it's a great investment of time. It's good to hear you say they're happier too. I would definitely agree with that. Although I
Mhm.
noticed I found this looking at the most successful businesses. I saw that was kind of a key thing between them. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time today. All right, thanks, Terrell.
Absolutely.